There's an inherent conflict between being a successful business owner and also a supportive parent and partner. Anyone who's ever run their own business will understand this, and it's especially hard in your first few years when you're working more hours than you've ever worked before for less money than you've ever earned. It's a very traumatic and highly emotional time, and my guest today helps lead business owners just like you through these kind of problems. Hey, I'm Paul Green, and don't forget, for all of the content, tools and training to market and grow your MSP, check out MSPmarketingedge.com. Today's guest will not only tell you how to live a great life while still achieving everything you want with your business, he's also, bit random, but he's also a great singer, and he's got a little tune lined up for us at the end of today's interview.
Hey, my name is David Osk, and I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I might be the best encourager in the world.
Oh, what a great introduction. And not only do you have a great intro, a self-intro for this podcast, but as a little tease for what's coming up in the next 8 minutes or so, David, you are about to become the first ever guest in nearly 5 years of this podcast who sings on the podcast.
Yes.
That's coming up in the next 8 minutes. It's worth waiting for, it really is. So thank you very much for coming on, David. We're going to talk about an amazing subject today. How do you live an amazing life and still grow the business of your dreams? That's what we're going to talk about. Let's first of all find out who you are.
Man, thank you so much for having me. What an honor. And yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned the music. I was actually a vocal major at Belmont University here in Nashville back in the early 90s. And, even now I do a lot of music, along with running my main kind of book of business, as it were, is I'm an inventor and kind of product developer. So I have a product, kind of my mainstay is a product that's in 3,700 retail stores. And it's a first in the world, a thermostat guard that has a combination lock. So you prevent tampering of thermostats by just simply putting a box on it. And I solved the lost key problem.
I love that. So it stops someone else from just going in and fiddling with it and changing it.
Exactly. Yeah, it can get pretty costly. And of course, it's the old thermostat wars, people kind of understand that, whether it's your home or office, everybody kind of wants a different temperature. So it can solve that problem as well.
I love that. So just as a side note, I have a 14-year-old daughter. So if you could come up with a refrigerator lock, a food cupboard lock, an everything lock, something that turns off the Wi-Fi for her but not for me at about 10 at night. That'd be amazing. That'd be amazing. It really would. Yeah. So I know you spend your days inspiring business owners as well and talking to them about how they can improve their lives and their businesses. And it is the conundrum. And anyone who's been in business for more than a couple of years reaches that point. And I remember doing this myself. I've been in business since 2005. And I remember about 2008, 2009, still doing 60-hour weeks. My relationship with my wife at the time was suffering. And it was a really, really difficult thing. And I think every business owner goes through this, where you realize that these are two completely conflicting things. To grow a business requires your time and your attention. To keep a relationship healthy, and especially when you've got kids, requires your time and your attention. But also you need to sleep and exercise and eat and not drink too much and all of that stuff. And these two things are kind of bashing completely. Is this just me and some of the business owners I talk to, or is this something that most business owners go through?
No, I don't think there's any question that if you're going to do something that, like start a small business, right? Bring a product or service to market that people not only value, but know about, right? The old marketing piece, it's going to take sacrifice. And people often use that phrase, work-life balance. And I don't like that. I think that this idea of work-life integration is really, kind of the actualization of it. I think balance in some ways is desired. We think, we would like some balance. I want to kind of have a certain number of hours, at home and at work and things like that. And for sleeping, like you mentioned. But guess what? On the front end of any, great endeavor, as it were, there's going to be some things that are maybe wildly out of balance for a while. And I think that's okay. I think that's normal. It's like if I'm going to climb a mountain, well, guess what? I'm going to be preparing well in advance, for that climb, as it were, by spending a lot of hours, not only investigating the equipment that I need, getting out in the field and using it and figuring out what works and what doesn't. And So I think that there's definitely some wild, swings on the front end for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, I've worked with lots of different businesses over my career. I've been working with MSPs since 2016, and I do think MSP owners have it even harder than other business owners, because the very nature of being an MSP is you don't know what's going to happen. You can come in on a regular Tuesday morning and the whole world could have gone mad. An update could have gone wrong overnight, or you could have had a ransomware attack on one of your clients' computers, and suddenly everything you plan to do that day by necessity has to go. And that happens to MSPs even when they've got 5, 10, 15, 20 staff. So let's talk more about what you mean by integration. So I think we're all comfortable with work-life balance, but what do you mean by work-life integration? Is that about making sure that the two of them are coming together in the right way, or does it mean something different?
I guess the way I kind of internalize that is just this idea of, who's showing up, meaning if I'm going to participate or say that I value certain things in my life, I've had to have done a little bit of pre-work, as it were, to understand, what are those things that are on that list? You can't be everything to everybody. You can't, you can't participate in everything, all that kind of stuff. So you have to have kind of a hierarchy of, these are the things that I think are really important right now, and be willing to say no to some stuff, even for a while. And at the same time, I think that, we often, those of us who are kind of entrepreneurial minded, we get this idea that, the business is everything. And I'll show some grace here. I think on some level, for a short time, it might be, because money, I heard somebody say money is kind of close to air. Try to live without it. It's really important. And at the same time, we've got, our families, right? The people that we love, and we sure don't want to send, the message, to those closest to us that, you don't matter right now. So I think largely it's expectations and communication on the front end. I remember when I was starting my business about 10 years ago, a lot of it was, I didn't really realize that I really should have communicated, to Lisa and my kids, for that matter, hey, I'm going to have to spend a bit more time on this today or the next 3 days, or maybe, guess what, I'm having to work this weekend on something, or, things like that. So I think I learned, maybe the hard way on the front end about even just communicating what that looks like. And the communication, by the way, goes a long way.
Yeah, I think it really does. And I guess that's when you take your life partner and your kids and your friends and everything else, and as you say, using that communication, you form a partnership with them. I have a similar thing with my daughter, so I'm a sole parent. Yeah. There's just me and her here, and as much as I joke about her raiding the refrigerator, actually we have a great partnership. So, for example, you and I are recording this. I just checked my clock. It's 7:15 in the evening on a Monday evening, right? In the school summer holidays, back in August, because we work a few months ahead on the podcast. But she's really happy with me doing this, because actually she's in her room, she's doing some stuff. This is a regular thing, and she knows that the flip side of some days I work late doing podcast interviews, but the flip side of that is, like, tomorrow we're going to London all day. We're seeing two theatre shows tomorrow. So it swings and roundabouts, right? And I get a great podcast, which is important to me. She gets a great day. Let me ask you a question about that. A lot of business owners struggle with that balance, that integration, because there's just too much to do. So I'm in a lucky position where I've got a great team. They do the heavy lifting, right? I just talk a bit on camera. Someone else does all the other hard work, right? But there are many MSP owners who are not in that position, because actually, if they don't do 10 hours of work today and 10 hours tomorrow, and you know what, I've got to get up at 6 on Saturday, then actually, as we were saying, like, money's important, and the clients stop paying because the work's not getting done. How do you advise people to break out of that trap without just throwing more hours into it? Well,
I think that, like anything, you better count the cost of starting a business before you start the business. Meaning, if you don't have a bit of an exit strategy from that, really head down mentality and rhythm in your life, that can get really old really fast, even if the money starts pouring in, right? Mm-hmm. Money only goes so far, I think. You can't sustain that level of effort, really. It's not a life. You become a human doing and not a human being. And so I think that largely on the front end, you need to define, what are those steps necessary to build a business that I don't have to serve, that serves me. Again, on the front end, I get it, right? You might have a year or two where you're really, head down going for it. But I would say that if you are in that situation right now and you don't know what your exit strategy is, and I'm not talking about selling your business, I'm talking about getting out of the the day-to-day and into the driver's seat, working on your business and not in it. You need to surround yourself with some people who can help you, manage those steps, because you're going to get burned out really, really quickly.
Yeah, I completely agree. So let me ask you this then, David. What do you do to help business owners free themselves from this trap? Because that's really what it is.
I do a couple of different things. So I'm a coach, but I do it from a values-based perspective, meaning we really help the person build self-awareness. What are my values, my convictions, my virtues? Those are different things. And quite often when we don't have clarity on, those things that really light us up, I'm talking everything from what gives our goosebumps to, what do I believe is true about me and everybody around me, and how can I affect the world? So that self-awareness piece is huge. I'm also a part of the Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind, and I facilitate 2 groups within that mastermind of, business owners. And so, of course, as a collective, right, we got a virtual board of directors, for our business, and we talk about personal things as well. So we call it a band of brothers for our personal lives. And it's life-changing, right? We become like the people we spend the most time with, period. And how do we know that's true? Like gravity. It's because those of us who have children, we do not want our kids getting caught up in the wrong crowd, period, right? We know that like instinctively, but we don't often think about that for ourselves. So the coaching piece is one side of my life that I'm really passionate about. And then, the masterminding is another that's been life-changing for me as well.
Yeah, 100%. I'm a massive fan of mastermind groups. I've run some previously in the UK for MSPs. I don't do that anymore. It's not something I personally enjoy facilitating. I enjoyed it for a few years, and then once it stopped being fun, I stopped doing it, which I think is a sensible way to run any kind of business. But the concept of it, of you sitting with other people with exactly the same problems as you, and you figuring it out. And I love that approach of the values-based thing. If I think of my values of, being a great dad, the best possible dad, is a very strong value, but also being a successful business owner is also a strong value. And I can see how many people would feel exactly the same way. And mastermind groups help those 2 things integrate, as we were talking about earlier. Okay, yeah. David, just briefly, before you sing, and we are going to get a few notes out of you, just tell us, how can we get in touch with you and learn more about what you do?
Sure. So my main business, if you go to statguardplus.com, you can check out my thermostat guard line, and as well just my personal page is davidask.com.
Okay, and for the first time since the 5th of November 2019, when we launched this podcast thinking it was going to be just a sort of a 10-week experiment, and here we are nearly 5 years later. David, I can almost do a drum roll. Maybe our producer Simon can insert a drum roll at this point. There we go. There's the drum roll. Okay. David, would you like to prove to us that you are also not just a great guest, but a great singer as well?
Hey, by the way, before I do that, I recorded my last record in England. The producer is British. He has a home here in Nashville, but so being that I'm...
hang on a second. You're in one of the greatest musical towns in the world, which is Nashville, and you came to England to record a record. That doesn't make sense.
I know. Isn't that funny?
That's crazy.
All right, I'm going to actually sing something that I don't think I've ever sung, but I heard it this morning. My daughter was playing it. So I'm going to just give it a try here. So... Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high. All right, how about that?
There we go. Very good. Thank you very much. And you helped us immensely by picking an out of copyright piece of music as well. So thank you very much, David.
Here we go.
Thanks for being on the show.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Paul Green's MSP Marketing Edge.